So I'm delighted to introduce today's presenter, Dr. Erica Rose Jeffrey. Erica Rose is one of the founders for Dance for Parkinson's Australia and will be talking to us today about her extensive experience in working as an arts practitioner in and with communities. So would you please welcome Erica Rose?
Thank you so much, Melissa. I'm really excited to be part of this AMPlify series. And I'm going to talk about my work in community across two of the sort of different areas that I work in, both the dance for health sort of context in terms of dance for Parkinson's, and also some of the work that I've done connected to dance and peacebuilding. Before going any further, I too want to acknowledge the traditional custodians of the lands throughout Australia. As First Peoples and from Dance for Parkinson's, we recognize the continuing connection to land, waters, and culture and honor long-standing artistic, cultural, and creative expression. And we pay our respects to elders past, present, and emerging. And I want to acknowledge my own sort of journey into work around arts and health. And just tell a little story about my grandmother. So before I get to voices from the community. So my grandmother was a social activist, a leader in the United States. That's where I'm originally from. You might hear it in my accent. And she was a very petite person, but she was a big leader of change. And she would say, you never win freedom permanently. You have to keep at it and at it and at it. And I think about that a lot when I'm engaging with community, because I think this idea of ongoing work in community is about consistent, really thoughtful relationships and how we nurture those relationships over time, and we really keep at it and at it and at it. And so I often feel like my grandmother is with me when I'm engaging in this kind of community work. I also think it's really important to think about the voices from the community in terms of here I have some of the top 10 reasons for dance, which have been shared by our broader Dance for Parkinson's community, and that really what dance means to them. So I'm a big believer in the benefits and power of dance, but these are some of the things that they've shared, that dance sparks creativity, it connects mind to body, it tells stories, it brings communities together. The dance is social and breaks isolation. The basis of dance is rhythm. It creates a sense of belonging, boosts emotional health. Dance keeps us active. And the last one, dance is a shortcut to joy. And I think that in really sort of considering working in community across different arts practices, keeping those voices front and center in any of the work I do is really important in terms of both making sure that community is consulted along the way, engaged in co-design processes where possible, that there's reflective engagement, and that ultimately we're having a bit of fun together. So I really like this quote from one of our participants. I thought I would share a little bit just about the background of Dance for Parkinson's in Australia, just to sort of give a sense of where the program has come from. We are an affiliate of the Dance for PD program in the US. So here in Australia, we've been running classes for just over 10 years. We started sort of initial programs in 2013 in partnership with Dance for PD, which is a dance group based with the Mark Moritz Dance Company in Brooklyn. And going back even further, so over 20 years ago, this had a really clear community genesis in terms of the idea of this kind of arts and health program coming from the community. So Ole Westheimer, who was the executive director of the Brooklyn Parkinson Support Group at that time, really wanted to do something more with the group, more with the participants. So she approached the arts community, and together they created this idea, working with the participants to design a dance class. Now, the Mark Moritz Dance Company had never worked with the Parkinson's community, So it was really this co-developed kind of community class. And then along the way, clinical practitioners started to be invited in and have continued on the journey. So I really think about this idea of involving community from the beginning, wherever possible, is really key into sort of developing long-term and sustainable programs. So here in Australia, we offer dance classes for people living with Parkinson's, also for broader communities of seniors. And we really focus on the ideas of the arts activity, where we can explore movement and music in ways that are artistic and enjoyable, stimulating and creative. So there's been a whole body of research on dance for well-being, but specifically on dance for Parkinson's. And I'm not going to focus on this now, but if there's questions later, happy to discuss that. Also happy to share resources as well. But when I'm thinking about the class itself, while there are therapeutic benefits for the class, I'm really approaching it as a teaching artist, as an artist, creating opportunities for people to be creative and expressive within this context. So that's really what's centering my practice in offering these kinds of classes. These are a few of our participants from one of our Sydney classes. As you can see, we're having a lot of fun. It's serious fun, as one of our participants said. We work hard. We're having serious fun, but really trying to involve a number of different people. Our classes here, this photo actually includes a teaching artist, a participant, and a volunteer. So we have a really wonderful network of people connected to our classes. We also think a lot about this idea of collaboration. So when I think about community, has sort of many different tendrils. So you have, say, the community of the people living with Parkinson's, their partners, their carers, family members. Then you have, say, the state agency or Parkinson's associations. You have, so it's sort of like rings that are all connected through a web of relationships. You have, say, occupational therapists and physical therapists. You have doctors and neurologists. You might have researchers and academics who are interested. So in all of this, I feel like we can accomplish more when we're holding hands together than when we can on our own. So it's this idea of how can we collaborate to, strategically create more options for people to have these kinds of opportunities. So this idea of having, common vision and shared goals, this idea of finding a way to commitment to working together, how we might develop mutual respect, even though we may be coming from very different perspectives and fields, backgrounds. This idea of strong relationships and trust is really, really critical. So when thinking about the Parkinson's community, people may not have ever danced before in terms of when they're coming to a class for the very first time. Or you might think about, if you're not that familiar with Parkinson's, often it's, typified as it is a movement disorder, but the symptoms that are often sort of most known are things that are maybe the tremor or balance issues. So they're very physical, visible symptoms. Parkinson's affects everybody differently, so that may look different for different people, but sort of commonly it's known by these sort of visible symptoms. So really thinking about the experience of coming into a dance class, which is a very embodied physical experience with other people. So there's no real place to hide in that kind of class. So it takes that idea of building relationships before somebody even comes into the room so that they feel that they're invited in, that they're supported. It feels like a safe environment for them to even step into the space. And that's safe both physically in terms of the accessibility issues, but also in terms of just the whole context of how the space comes together in terms of the people who are there, how a class is facilitated, so that people really can get the most out of the experience. I think flexibility is really important in this kind of work. I think often it's an ongoing long-form improvisation. So being prepared, making sure that you have all your strong stakeholder relationships in place, but also in the moment being able to step into the setting as it provides the conditions that it provides you, because it can change from week to week, from day to day. When thinking about working with the Parkinson's community, somebody's experience can change week to week depending on their medication or if they didn't get enough sleep. And so I think it's really thinking about being flexible. And I'm always a fan of good communication across all of our relationships. I think that's really critical for working in community. Also, I think it's around our role as teaching artists, or what I see my role as teaching artists, is also to look after the community, but also to look after myself. So that might be around, what expectations there are around longevity of a program. Who is holding which parts of the administration or responsibility of a particular program? How are we, fundraising or supporting the payment of teaching artists within a particular context? So all these different things, I think, are part of this idea of collaboration. I'm just going to show a few pictures from some of our community projects. These are actually from some of our New South Wales classes. So we've had a really wonderful opportunity to have a program at the Sydney Opera House called Dancing Connections, and had the chance to work with different companies coming through the Opera House in terms of really curating a class that connects to the performance context of what's being featured at the Opera House, and then inviting our community into the Utzon room and dancing at the Opera House with professional dancers. It's really quite amazing. Last year, we had the chance to work with Bangarra Dance Theatre, which was a beautiful experience. And this year we had the chance to work with a really great group from New Zealand that was doing sort of youth hip hop and Pacifica dance stories. And so that was quite an exciting opportunity for us in terms of our existing community of dancers, volunteers, and teaching artists, but also that ongoing sharing of practice across different parts of the dance context. So, performance groups with this kind of dance for health focus. And this is just really lovely in terms of highlighting a really wonderful initiative from some of our Sydney teachers last year in terms of a performance. So in thinking about the Dance for Parkinson's program, generally the way that it works is it's kind of a community dance class, often held weekly. And there's no pressure to perform. But after a time, some groups decide that they really want to perform. So where that is of interest, we do try to support those opportunities. So this was a really beautiful sort of honoring of 10 years of classes in Sydney, and brought together over 70 community participants. So that included people living with Parkinson's and their family members for a lovely sort of showcase at Sydney Dance Theatre. And it was just a really beautiful opportunity to connect in that performative way. I mean, dance is a performing art, so sometimes it is nice to share that in different ways. Our colleagues in Canberra are very active. They perform regularly. There's a really lovely initiative from our colleagues from Lifespan in Western Australia with some outdoor performances connected to sort of other community events. So really interesting work happening in this space. If there are questions, please put them in the chat. I can't quite see the chat right now, but I'll make sure that we get to any questions that might come up, because I'm going to switch gears a little bit. And we're going to just do a little movement activity because I love to do a little bit of movement. This is just a very, very simple one. So you want to sort of start by looking down your sternum, so looking down towards your belly button, and you're just going to take your finger or your hand and like you're drawing, I'm going to do it up high, but you can do it down lower, like you're drawing a circle or painting a circle on the floor. Like this, right? So you're just going to sort of, and if you can start doing it anti-clockwise, or I would say counterclockwise, that's great. Just do that. And then you're just going to slowly start to turn the circle. So now it's sort of going towards me till it becomes a helicopter, like it's going over your head. And just sort of noticing what happened there. Which direction is the circle going now? So try it again. Maybe try it with your other hand, just so we get both hands in. So start by going anti-clockwise, which is always hard for me. So sort of pointing down towards the floor. And then keep that circle going the same direction. Take it up so it becomes a helicopter above you. And then just shake it out. So often what happens is that the way that sort of perception is, you're starting off going one way, and then it starts to look like it's going the other direction, right? So it may have translated, may not have translated online, but sort of just a fun thing to explore. And I really like this because it's about perspective, right? In terms of the way in which we sort of see things, and how even if I'm staying fixed, often perspective talks about like you move so you see different things. Well, I'm staying in the same place, but by sort of changing the direction, changing like one part of my movement, things look different. And that's one of the really beautiful things I think about the sort of power of arts and health, or arts and peace, is this idea around the possibility of shifting perspectives, of creating moments for discovery, for connection, for new ideas. So the other area of work that I've been quite engaged in terms of community is around dance and peacebuilding, or arts and peacebuilding, using the arts in sort of context to build social cohesion around sort of rebuilding trust in communities, and sort of looking at the different ways in which the arts can help to sort of start to build some of those bridges, start to build some of those ways of expressing that are not just words, but the sort of multiple embodied ways in which we share stories and build connections as humans. So I have been engaged in both practice and research in this area. And so the first slide in this included a cover of a book that I co-wrote with my wonderful colleague Leslie Pruitt called Dancing Through the Dissonance. So if you're interested in this kind of work, there's lots of great stuff happening, and the field has continued to expand. But I'm just going to talk a little bit about sort of this idea of both researching in terms of looking at these different communities. So I had the chance to engage in some both projects and research in the Philippines, Colombia, and the United States, looking at youth-based dance and peacebuilding programs, and sort of understanding from young people's perspectives how that helped to build their connections and understandings, and the power of movement in those situations, which is what's included in the book in terms of really looking at those particular case studies. But I think for me, it's also about my own learning and my own understanding of how I gain that nuance that comes through sharing dances, through maybe sharing songs, or different ways of expressing that help us to start to unspool some of the complexities that might exist in conflict situations. And so for me, I think it's an ongoing learning in terms of even though I have studied, I've performed, I've had these elements of my career, that engaging in this kind of arts and health or arts and peace building work, that it's an ongoing learning journey for me. So here I am in the Philippines trying to learn how to do one of these complicated fan dances. This was probably the most successful part of my learning with the fans. Good thing that that's the part that's captured, not when I drop them a few seconds later. But I just really want to encourage that sort of active learning mindset in terms of thinking of this kind of work. Some of my most recent work has been in the autonomous region of Bougainville, which is in Papua New Guinea. And if you're not familiar with the area of Bougainville, they had a 10-year civil war called the Crisis, a very violent conflict that in the end was sort of successfully has gone through a peace process. So it's one of the few sort of lasting pieces where the Bougainvillean community and the Papua New Guinea community and government went through a peace process facilitated by the United Nations, came up with a peace agreement. That peace agreement is held, and through the process of a referendum where the Bougainvillean community voted to become independent, and they're now on the journey towards independence. And so have been involved in a lot of dialogue, work with communities across Bougainville, but also had the chance to participate and lead a specific arts and peace building project connected to the referendum. So this idea of determining political future, so the people determining their own political future. And that was a really fascinating chance to really think about bringing peace builders together with artists and cultural practitioners. And it involved dance, theater, weaving, song, painting, and sort of costume making, traditional costume making as well, out of sort of natural fibers and things. And was, I think, a really great opportunity to see how that process of really telling stories, and how this idea of independence and people thinking, oh, we want to have a peaceful future for our children. What does that look like? How can we tell those stories in different ways? So these are just a few of the participants, amazing community participants from Bougainville, and some of the kind of participatory activities that we did as part of these. These all resulted in kind of showcases as well. We weren't quite sure when we started if people would want to just make things and explore ideas, or if they'd want to have a kind of a performance. All of the groups decided that they wanted to perform. So that was another interesting thing, because most performances happen outside, so you have to contend with rain. But lots of learning that happened there as well. And what I find really fascinating is that I've had these two streams for some time in terms of the Dance for Health and the Dance and Peacebuilding. Well, increasingly, in the sort of global community, they're getting closer and closer together, because if you look at the ways in which, say, the World Health Organization or the United Nations are looking at some of these larger social issues about conceptualizing community safety or social cohesion or well-being, they're closer and closer together around looking at these as systemic issues. And so sort of having the chance to have, peace is not in a separate sort of stream from community well-being. It's intrinsically part of that. Social cohesion is, and sort of understanding this way of how do we function together in our societies, how can we be well together, is, I think, a really important question. So those are just sort of a few highlights and some of the photos that we had. I'm just going to stop sharing now. One of the things that I think, just to sort of finish on, is that in all of these kinds of initiatives, there's a lot of focus on the community and the sort of the importance of connecting with community, which is critical. But I think it's also important to think about as an individual participating or leading or volunteering, creating as an artist, engaging in these kinds of contexts, how are we also looking after ourselves within this? And for me, that's it takes constant refinement and reflection, because something that might have worked, last year within a particular community context, maybe there's different things going on in my own life, and I need to really create different systems or different boundaries, different supports to ensure the sustainability of a program, and also look after myself, because I'm a part of the community too as a teaching artist, and I'm not separate from that. But sometimes I think in the effort to focus on the sort of arts outcome, that sometimes can get overlooked or sort of is the last thing to be considered. And so just want to encourage everyone who is thinking of or is already engaging in this kind of community arts practice to also consider those elements of looking after oneself within those contexts. I might pause there because I've talked, I think, a bit fast, but hopefully there's some questions for discussion. It'd be great to hear from the group.
Thank you so much, Erica Rose. That was fantastic. Can we all give a little round of applause virtually?
Thank you.